Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show. Today in episode 195, Ryan Patrick Burns and Gary Michael May-McGill join me for a panel discussion about time travel. Let me tell you a little bit about my guests. Ryan Patrick Burns began researching the Uintah Basin and the mysterious Skinwalker Ranch years ago, but when his passion for answers could no longer be quenched, he left his corporate job in Salt Lake City and moved to the desolate and remote basin to investigate the ranch full time. Ryan now owns property overlooking the ranch, and he hosts the popular podcast Hero Paranormal and has also written about his experiences investigating Skinwalker. Gary Michael May-McGill is an American actor, entertainer, singer, songwriter, filmmaker, comedian, producer, editor, activist, psychic medium, and his mission is to spread love into the universe. His YouTube channel is called Camp Gmay, and it is an original music video jukebox, an elaborate mixture of Gary Michael May and Tribe Sunshine. Gary Michael May-McGill also hosts an open mic jam live stream 7 p.m. to midnight PST every Saturday night. Everyone is welcome to play a tune on the open mic virtual stage or just hang out and make some friends. Camp Gmay and Gary Michael also host live virtual festivals and concerts, and is always looking for new artists to join and collaborate. Thanks for liking, commenting, subscribing, and sharing this podcast with your friends. And I'm happy to announce that channel memberships are now available so you can receive my perks. Without further ado, I'll bring Gary and Ryan onto the stage. Hi, guys. So nice to see you. Thank you for coming back.
Howdy, howdy.
Howdy.
So today we're going to talk about time travel. I know, Ryan, you've done research into the whole, I don't know if you want to call them allegations or theories about Trump being a time traveler. And Gary, you've done some research. So why don't we start off by talking a bit about what is time travel? Gary, do you have any thoughts on that?
You know, first off, I appreciate you inviting me today with this wonderful topic. You have so many different topics that you touch on, and the time travel one for me is very interesting because I really haven't done a lot of research on it. I know that I've been on the planet for 60 years, so I know how I kind of feel about it, just rationally myself. And then yet I'm willing to listen to different theories and hopefully take something from it. So today, I'm more of a observer, and I'm going to give you some feedback on how I feel about the situation. And hopefully I can learn something today.
Awesome. Yeah, we can all learn something from each other. That's the beauty of us getting together. And Ryan, I'm wondering what are your thoughts about what is time travel?
This, I, like everybody else, grew up with the idea that time travel was just science fiction and that you needed this far out device, something like a DeLorean that goes 88 miles an hour. And if you can time things just right, you can manipulate the time allotted and either fold or bend or puncture the space-time continuum. But as I've gotten a little older and researched things like quantum, I love your show's title, by the way, Quantum Guide Show, because this falls right in line. As you start to look at like the quantum angle of science, you start to realize that it is something, time is something that's a human construct. And when I first had my mind blown was a quantum calculation explaining how by doing things in the present, you can change the past. This sounded far-fetched to me, but it's somewhat true. And it's not just how we perceive the past, it is actually what has transpired. And we see this in a number of different scientific ways, like the calculations and the heavy, deep math. But in a more human, like relevant way, we see people that change their ways. And when they change their ways, it almost seems as if the damage they caused in the past is not just sugar coated, but in many cases disappears. So
Mhm.
yeah, there's a whole quantum angle. So it's a huge discussion. I'm excited to get into it.
Me too. Now, I personally believe in the simulation theory. Simulation theory doesn't mean that it's not real. It's based on, I would say, the primary experiment is what they call the double slit experiment, where they would pass photons through a slit and they would come out and splatter on a screen that would basically show the pattern. And the pattern that the photons would take was what they call an interference pattern, where it was basically proof that the photons were waves and not particles. But then they put a camera to observe the particles just before they hit the screen, repeated the experiment, and lo and behold, now the photons came through and hit the screen as particles and formed these lines where they hit the screen. And they couldn't figure this out. So then they positioned a camera in such a way that they could they that the I know this is going to sound crazy, but the photons weren't aware that they were being watched. So they come through the slit, headed for the screen, and then the camera observes them, and suddenly they turn from waves into particles, but they don't just turn from waves into particles as they go past the camera. Way back from their origin source, they are now changed into particles. So somehow, um, physical matter as we perceive it is conscious. And when we see something a certain way, it goes back to the source time to become that thing, which is to me evidence of time travel. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not too familiar with that theory, but it's kind of relevant to the fact that a lot of stuff that I see out there, people are trying to say that you have this dimension, okay, and we all know that time was kind of man-made, so it's just like all you have is now, what is happening right now, all the time. So the future and the past doesn't exist too much, because once someone's dead, it's going to be hard to go back and see someone that's been buried in the ground already. But what they say is that you can travel into different dimensions. And what I see is that, to me, it would be totally possible to time travel in this dimension into the future. But it would be hard to time travel into the past, because that's already happened. Those people are dead and gone. A good example would be if you live in New York and I live in California, okay, and you, and say me and Ryan live in California and you live in New York, okay. Well, let's just say I fly to New York to come see you, okay, and Ryan has to walk. Well, I'm time traveling because I'm going to get there way before, months and months before Ryan gets there. So I'm going to be able to get there ahead of time. I'm going to be able to get there in the future. Ryan's still in the past. He's not going to have any information about anything until he gets there. So it's kind of, when I think of time travel, I think of that. You see these theories where it's speed and light and dimensions, and because we all know Wi-Fi, you can't see it, but it's a different dimension. It's there and it travels like lickety split. So I'm still trying to learn about time travel. So like I said, hopefully we can get into this and get deep. Ryan?
Such a great point, Gary. It's like, it's like life is a game of seconds and inches. And like Gary put it into perfect perspective, him flying and me walking. It's like we're in different dimensions, man. It's like one isn't even keeping up with the other one. And, it is really interesting that when I first looked at this deal with Trump, it sounded a little far-fetched. You see a meme here, a meme there. Sounds a little far-fetched, but when you take pen to paper and historically start looking at what has transpired, it's the opposite. Either this Matrix has an incredible sense of humor and everything just appears to be a certain way, or it's a mathematical irregularity and a synchronicity and coincidence that's almost impossible to explain, which is possible. But basically, Nikola Tesla claimed that he could move around in time a little bit. And not a lot, like 3 to 5 minutes, like Gary was saying, it was more difficult to do these big moves. But if he had enough amperage and volts cranking, and he'd bring his friends in, and I guess he had 8 to 10 foot booms that were like parentheses shaped, about 8 to 10 feet apart, and he would walk between them. Something similar to a dimensional rift would be caused, and he could move 3 to 5 minutes in the future or 3 to 5 minutes in the past. And he could prove this by doing things like putting stuff in people's pockets and saying it won't be there when I come back because I'll go back and I'll pull it back out, and things like this, little parlor tricks. But it was enough to prove to enough people that were close to him that this stuff worked. And it is really interesting that when he passed, Donald Trump's uncle, John George Trump, who was arguably the smartest person alive other than Tesla, and definitely more plugged into the government, I would say, way smarter than a lot of other people. And he was in charge of this alien technology board. And that's literally what they called it. It had a few different names, but basically the FBI and what was then the predecessor to the CIA said, hey, go in, grab all his stuff, all of his notes, tell us if there's anything of value. He went in, he grabbed everything, and allegedly came back, I think 3 days later, and said, nothing to speak of. Well, that's where things get interesting. And I don't know where we want to blast off from there.
Ryan, you're talking about going in and getting all of Tesla's
Yes, correct. Nikola
technology
Tesla
and
stuff.
notes. Sorry,
Yeah,
you said he, and I just want to make sure I understood you correctly.
Yes.
So, so what I'm hearing is that Donald J, did you say father or grandfather?
Uncle,
Sorry, went in and got a hold of all Tesla's stuff. And then when he reported back, he said, nah, nothing really to see here. And then the next step is these books. And I don't know if you've looked at the images from the books, but the one of Baron Trump looks exactly the same as the today Baron Trump when he was younger. Exactly the same. It just blew my mind. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, or Gary, did you have something you wanted to add before we get into that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I watched one theory not that long ago, and this guy was saying that, and as crazy as this sounds, okay, I'm just going to throw it out there because it's just one of the theories that I saw, but it's kind of relative to what you guys are talking about. And that this guy was saying that the only way to really time travel is when you die and you're born again, because that energy goes into that other dimension. And then because we're living in a simulation, and a woman's womb is how you time travel. So your energy can die and then go back to this mass of energy, and then it time travels back and you're reborn into 50 years later, 100 years later, whatever it is, because it happens that quick from it's like there's no time involved in it. So when you think of Baron and stuff like that, maybe that's a really bizarre theory, but it's a little kind of relative to what you're saying, because these people have children and then they keep time traveling through their, that's what this guy's theory was, that you time travel through family and history. So kind of weird.
Yeah. And I don't know, Karen, if you can put a picture of Baron up. If not, I can hold something up so you can see it, or the listeners or watchers can see it. But yes, looks very much like the Baron Trump we know. And interestingly, the books are wild, because these books come from the 1890s. Ingersoll Lockwood authored a variety of books, among them one called The Last President, which is very interesting given our current state of affairs. And the Baron Trump novels, the illustrations are very interesting indeed, because the illustrator for the novels was a gentleman named George Edwards. And George Edwards did all these amazing illustrations and just happened to be a member of just about every secret society and philosophical organization you can imagine at the time. And one of those secret societies, you had to be over 6 feet tall to be a member, which seems like the most ridiculous like membership necessity, unless there's something we don't know. Like, is this Nephilim bloodlines? Is this like, it makes zero sense. But then of course we have Baron, which is an absolute giant of a man. And all of the Trump boys, Donald Trump, Don Jr., and Eric, are all over 6 feet tall. So yet another coincidence.
Sorry, I can't bring it up. I'm having trouble with StreamYard. When I go to the present window and I hit screen share, the screen is too big. I can't access the share button. So I can select the internet file that I pulled
I
up
can hold
the
it up.
picture. Oh, that'd be great. That'd be
I got
great.
an extra
Thank you.
laptop here that just started working, so that's a blessing. But yeah, there he
Okay.
is.
Yes.
And I mean, kind of almost the same look too, that kind of angle and
Yeah.
looking down.
Can you put
Totally.
the link up, Karen, and maybe I can screen share it?
Yeah.
Oh, how do I do that, Gary?
I'll hold it up again.
Yeah, maybe Ryan can do it too, because he can just Ryan, just go down to present and hit screen share.
Can
Let me
he
try
can
that.
he do that if I don't have him as co-host?
Well, that's
I
Can
don't see
true.
anybody-
that option.
Yeah.
It's still, whether he's a co-host or not, he can still screen share. So Ryan, all you do is you just open another window
Gotcha.
and you go to that web page and then go down to present and hit share screen,
Okay.
and it'll come backstage, Karen, and then you bring it up.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So so these books were written when, Ryan?
These books were all written in the 1890s. So the travels and adventures of Little Baron Trump and his wonderful dog Bulger. And it's really strange, because the series is about time travel, and his father, as we mentioned in one of these books, The Last President, is allegedly the last president of the Republic of the United States, which we are in fact a republic. So this is super, super interesting. And basically, Baron would just kind of go around and have these adventures and travel. And you know, Ingersoll Lockwood was a pretty interesting guy. I'm not exactly sure how he got involved with George Edwards, because George Edwards, the illustrator, is almost more interesting. And these two became this working group of like this magnificent like series of books that really have stood the test of time, because we're all fairly familiar with H.G. Wells and the idea that, you know, the time machine, an amazing book, and it kind of brought time travel to the forefront and people believing in it. And while we're talking about that, actually, since I'm on the topic of having a methodology or like a machine, right? H.G. Wells did the time machine. And if you have a machine like the one described that Nikola Tesla used from people who saw him use it, fast forward to the future, there's a gentleman named Andrew Basiago who claimed to have been a part of a time travel program. And he basically described a machine identical to what the people described that witnessed Nikola Tesla's machine, the 8 to 10 foot parenthesis booms, stepping within the center, 8 to 10 feet wide, and very rudimentary controls, and a super basic, big, heavily insulated cord that you plugged into the wall. And this is exactly what Andrew Basiago described, which is interesting because I don't think he would have described it exactly the same unless he had some real world knowledge. But, you know, he described going back in time to important moments in history to gather information about what really transpired. And he really describes it in kind of like it was really happening, but he was more of a spectator or an observer. In the future, it seemed that he was more of a participant because he had to actually bring back things from the future to keep the current timeline in order. And they preferred, for whatever reason, young children to do the time travel, which brings us back to the adventures of Little Baron Trump. Like, why would a child be the one bouncing around? Why wouldn't it be an adult that's much more experienced and knowledgeable? But there's this another very strange coincidence that it seems to always be children.
Ryan, I need to interrupt you for a second because I'm getting some feedback and I'm wondering if you have your noise cancellation from your settings. If you tick the box for the noise cancellation under your settings.
Yeah, go to settings, Ryan, and hit audio, and then make sure that your echo cancellation is on.
Okay. Is that better? That should do it.
Way better. Way better. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
And Andrew Basiago, they actually had a special designed kind of an envelope. They had to put whatever object they wanted to bring back had to go in the envelope so that it could be transferred from one timestamp to another. So yeah, he's a pretty interesting guy too. So anyway, go on. What was your point again? Sorry for interrupting.
That we see this again, another coincidence that it's children doing the time traveling. It is Andrew Basiago said this program, Project Pegasus, is what it was called, that it looked for children to do this time traveling. Adults were sort of off the menu. And in the Baron Trump novels, we kind of have the same underlying truth.
Yeah. I'm still on the fence with time traveling to the past, only because, like I said, those people are buried and dead and gone to me. So for me, my brain's just like, how can you, unless it's in another dimension and there's a continuum and a different parallel universe or something, and things are happening, who knows? But what I do think, like I said, is going into the future is completely possible. But the only thing to me with time traveling to the future is, okay, so let's just say I time travel and I leave, say exactly in the year 2000, okay? And I time travel to 2010, okay? Let's say I stay in 2010 for a year. When I come back, it's 2001. I can't come all the way back to 2000. I can only come back to how much time is allotted in that dimension. See what I'm saying? Which is kind of trippy when you think about it, because if you're going to go forward, you can only come back to a point to where however long you stayed in the future. See what I'm saying? So when I think of time travel, that's just what my mind thinks. Like I said, there's lots of theories, there's lots of different things. And I think like I said earlier, one of the biggest things to me is dimension traveling and current reality, this simulation traveling, right? And if there's a difference between that.
Totally. Now, according to some of the research I've done, when you can go forward, but when you come back, you can't necessarily access exactly the same timeline. So apparently, there are multiple timelines, and it's very difficult to come back. Again, this gets back to your point where you don't understand going back in time, but you understand going forward in time. So I just want to say a quick hi to Binzer and Lisa Lynn. Thank you for joining us in the live chat, guys. I really appreciate you. So apparently, just according to and of course, I don't know, it's hard to find nuts and bolts and factual information when you're doing research on this subject because it's so bizarre. But yeah, there are multiple timelines. There's also theories about there being a multiverse, multiple versions of us and crossing over between, because it seems like we have to do some interdimensional work in order to go forward or backwards. So again, are we slipping off to another timeline? And just to illustrate that, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Mandela effect. That to me, and I've actually experienced the Mandela effect firsthand, which says to me that there are different timelines and that they're shifting and they're moving. And I've got a little experience I'm going to tell you guys about after the break and get your opinion on. But anyway, I'm sorry, go ahead, Gary.
No, it was just interesting. I like the timeline, different timeline things, because that would make it possible if there was multiple timelines and of us. But like I said, it's hard to really get concrete evidence of any of that. You know what I mean? But like I said, I believe in time travel, but I need to learn more. I need to learn more theories, because then I can take all of that and then make a final decision. But until then, I need to hear more. What are some more theories out there for time travel that you guys are aware of?
Well, I was hoping that Ryan would continue a little bit about Trump, because there's theories the reason he was able to avoid 2 assassination attempts. Time travel explains it. Do you want to get into that a little bit, Ryan?
Sure. And to Gary's point, he's got a really good point. What he's talking about is a hypothetical situation that scientifically they've called the grandfather paradox, that arises with the question: if a person travels back in time and kills their grandfather, for example, before he has children, how would it be possible for him or both of them to be born? So there's a lot of truth in the science that Gary's talking about, and it's a scientific enigma. But
unless there's different timelines, in which case you exist in one timeline and you kill the grandfather in a different timeline, or a different version of the multiverse. So that's why I threw that in. It's sort of, I don't know. And God only knows what's real, guys. And we live in some strange times.
It's fun to figure it out,
100%. There's something very strange about the assassination attempts, and how he's either the luckiest guy on the planet, which is true in business as well. Somehow he's just always, on the cusp of losing everything continually, and somehow slides into home base. This is not a new endeavor for him. He's gone through this many times. And a very interesting additional point is what I mentioned about the DeLorean, the time travel machine, the DeLorean. In the movie Back to the Future, there's a character known as Biff Tannen. And the creators of the movie have come forward and said that they made Biff Tannen in Donald Trump's image. because if you remember the movie, for those who haven't watched it, Biff Tannen travels to the future. He creates a massive casino, Biff's Tower. I think he calls it the Pleasure Tower or something. But basically, we have the casino thing, which is very much like Trump. He travels to the future and he makes his fortune basically knowing what's going to sell, what stocks are going to go up, and all of the easy ways to make money. And this is why they characterized this character Biff Tannen based on Donald Trump, which again, in a time travel movie, very, very strange. And the reality is, he's either when you start putting all these things to paper and they just keep going. That's the weird thing, is we keep finding these strange things, like the creators of Back to the Future saying, yeah, we based this on Biff Tannen is based on Donald Trump because, well, what's the because? There's really no because other than maybe he's a time traveler. So we have that. And I don't know what direction we want to go from there.
It's definitely an interesting direction.
Mm-hmm. It sure is. Guys, I want to take a short break for a promotion. It's less than 2 minutes, and then we'll come right back. And then I have a question. I want to tell you about something that really happened to me and get your opinion on it. That would be fantastic. So we'll be right back. Everybody thrives when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change we wish to see in the world. Well, I don't know what happened. It didn't work. Everybody thrives when we have a mission, and there is no greater mission than to become the change we wish to see in the world. This holiday season, share a gift certificate for my services, because sometimes the people we love need a little help from consultation and support. They may have discovered that this world is not what they thought it was, and recent global events have awakened them, and now they're feeling unsettled. Or some of your loved ones may have experienced the paranormal and feel isolated with their not-so-popular beliefs. It is a big shock to wake up and find that the old familiar world is gone. It can be disturbing to go down the various rabbit holes, only to find that the information is difficult to digest and few people are willing to talk openly about it. Everybody would like to learn how to thrive in this new state of awareness as they discover that they are not conspiracy theorists. Everyone is now awakening, and once they find their way through it, there are many blessings waiting on the other side. My name is Karen Holton, and I offer vital services that may be just what many people need, and support for unique journeys into the weird and wonderful. Check out my Awakening Support and Ascension Consultation Services, created to support individuals with their chosen alternative realities and lifestyles, health and recovery, and their spiritual adventures. For more details, check out the various vital services found on my website, and be assured that I have found personal success with every category featured. My website is www.KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. That's KarenHolton healthcoach.com. Gift certificates are now available. And we're back. So I wanted to tell you guys about something that happened to me, and it may not be time travel, or it might be, I don't know. But when I was going to university, I was taking a lot of sociology and psychology courses. And in one course, we were taught that our memories are not necessarily accurate representations of reality of the past. Every time, especially if they're kind of negative memories, we take them out, we look at them, and whether we don't mean to, but we inadvertently embellish them with emotion, with details that are slightly different. And then we put the memory back, and the next time we take it out, we do the same thing again. And pretty soon, what we remember and what happened are quite different. You can see this at family reunions where someone will talk about, remember when we were kids and we did this and that, and they got different versions of the same story. That would be why. So I decided to do an experiment, and I decided because I had a not very good relationship with my mom growing up, and I had when I thought about the past, I didn't feel very good about it. So I decided to create a completely fabricated memory that was not true. And it made me happy. So I created a memory of, and I worked on it, used my imagination. It took me weeks, maybe even months to get it the way I wanted it. And I had this false memory that I planted. And I believed that when I would come home after school, my mom would make tea and she'd sit and pay attention to me and be interested in my day. And it felt so good. And I thought, I know this is nuts, but I'm going to do it anyway. And it actually helped me to move on from that stuck position of feeling sorry for myself because of what happened when I was a kid, because it was in some ways holding me back. So I even embellished it further that if I'd had a really bad day and came home, my mom could always tell, and she'd get out the good tea set and have some kind of special cookies that she'd let us eat together. And it just really made me feel so damn good. And I just kept it. And I never told another living soul.
Wow.
And after I did that, I went to visit my mom, and we were just having a casual visit. And all of a sudden, she turned to me right out of the blue and she said, Karen, do you remember those tea parties we used to have after school? And it blew my mind. I had
Wow.
never shared that with anybody. So, what I'm wondering is, did I somehow etherically or genetically transfer my fantasy to my mom? Did I go back and change reality? I don't know. And I kind of wanted to get you guys' opinion on that because I've never heard of anyone else doing it. And it's actually a technique I teach when I'm counseling people who are recovering from trauma because it was so incredibly beneficial for me. It really helped me to get past that. So I had a much better relationship with my mom in her old age.
Interesting.
It's in my book.
That's interesting because you're creating this false memory, changing your future, right? So you're almost going into the past to change your future. It's interesting. To me, once again, I can watch all these theories and all these videos on time travel and all this stuff, but basically, for me, how my brain works is I'm still just going to decide for myself what I know, what I've seen, what I think, and all these little bits and pieces come together. So first off, I just think of time and I say to myself, okay, the Gregorian clock, 12 months, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, that's all you ever get. 12 hours, they all equal 666 when you add them up all around. It's dimensional. So to me, when you're on Earth and it's rotating and there's 365 days in a year, and back then they're like, Joshua lived 900 years, 1,000 years. Well, that's only because they weren't on the Gregorian clock. They were on a different calendar. They are on a different time system. So that's why they live longer. And then when the reset happened after Jesus, and that's why it's 2024, is because now we're on the Gregorian clock. There's 365 days in a year, blah, blah, blah. So you age on that clock while you're on the planet. So if I go in a spaceship and I zap out into the solar system and cruise around, there's a good possibility that I'm not going to age at that same Gregorian clock because I'm not on that Gregorian clock anymore. Now I'm out here flying around, and I could probably only age for like a year out here flying around. Now when I come back, it's 100 years later. That's a possibility to me, definitely. What do you think, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm mesmerized by that because you hear these stories of people like Rip Van Winkle or Rumpelstiltskin, these stories of people who can sleep their way into time flaps. And I'm in two zones. So on the one hand, I 100% believe that you can astrally project and time travel in the way that Karen explained, that you're actually changing reality through your own manipulation of belief systems and remembering things a certain way. 100%. You're compressing the zip file, you're making changes, then you're re-uploading it. And so that I'm 100% in. Now, on the other hand, like with this Donald Trump time travel, we're talking about more of a electrical engineering scenario. And what's really interesting about John G. Trump is what transpired in his life after he got, I guess, nothing from Nikola Tesla's apartment when he died, and what he did with his life afterwards. He was involved with all kinds of x-rays, you name it, everything that was cutting edge and had to do with electrical engineering. He was in on it, even during the wartime effort.
Yes.
And something interesting is the USS Eldridge. A lot of people call this project, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Project Montauk, a spinoff of the Philadelphia experiment, where a number of individuals claimed that a ship disappeared for about 10 seconds and went forward and backward in time because it was bombarded with electrical energy. And I've talked with a few people about this. One of them was Jacques Vallée, and he didn't say there's nothing to it, which tells me there's something to it. That there's more than meets the eye to John G. Trump, his electrical engineering, and what he did, with the National Defense Research Committee after he left the Office of Alien Property, which is what they called the group that went in, him, and took all of Nikola Tesla's devices and notes and everything. And that Office of the Office of Alien Property was disbanded, and many claim it's still around but goes under a different name. But if you look at his timeline from when Nikola Tesla died, everything that he did afterwards was absolutely mind-boggling. He did all kinds of things in the medical arena where it came to devices, all kinds of things to national defense, radar, x-rays. I mean, you name it, and he was on the cutting edge. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
Right. In other words, Ryan, all the cutting edge stuff that he was on, including time travel, well, he was pretty much a master of all of it. So why wouldn't the time travel be just as prominent as the x-ray and the Wi-Fi and all this stuff that you can't see? He was on to it, right? He was on to all that other stuff. So throw time travel in there too. He's a master of it all.
Because all of these modern devices would have appear like magic, 200, 300 years ago. The other thing too is maybe that's why Donald J. is able to come close to the brink of losing businesses and then rallying, and like his life is very magical. And his son, boy, that's a tall young man for sure. But there's something otherworldly about that family. I'm not saying that in a bad way, I got nothing against him. I'm a Canadian, so I'm not getting involved in American politics. But as a human being, he's very, very interesting guy with a very, very interesting family.
Yeah. Well, Canadians time travel differently than Americans.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay. Interesting though. This whole time travel thing is definitely very, very interesting because there's so many elements to it, in directions that you can go theory wise.
And around the same times, there's some interesting other, claims, like in the same circles, let's say, but like Charlie Chaplin. Have you heard this one about Charlie Chaplin being able to? He has a movie called The Circus, and they allege that not only was Charlie Chaplin someone who believed in time travel, but in the movie the Circus, they allege that there is a time traveler in that movie. And it's basically a woman on a cell phone walking right through the street. And at the time, everybody commented, "Oh, look, it's a crazy lady." But nowadays, we recognize that behavior as, "Hey, that person's on a cell phone." And there's
Yeah.
a few of these in the past where you see what appear to be cell phones. But to Gary's point, I'm worried about the cell phone thing because, first of all, there'd be no cell phone towers.
Mhm.
How are they using the cell phone? Or is it cell phone technology wrapped up into something that is being used differently? I don't know.
I think you don't basically we're not going to need cell phone towers forever. It's just that our present state of technology. But I don't know if you ever watch Mohan Praveen. He goes to all these ancient temples, and he find in India and Southeast Asia, and he find there's all kinds of evidence of people, from 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, talking on cell phones, riding bicycles, all kinds of stuff. And then another thing, guys, is what they call, I might have the name wrong, but they're out of time artifacts. For instance, when they have done mining operations and they've been in coal beds that are like 2 million years old, and they find a little lady's Timex watch, things like that. There are these
Yeah.
misplaced artifacts that they're finding, and technologies that they're finding in these beds of coal or whatever they're mining that are millions of years old. So how can you explain that without a time travel idea,
Yeah,
right?
because they actually probably are time traveling in the sense, like I said, where when you leave the planet, because everyone knows that, look, and 100 years ago, there was absolutely no technology. I mean, you had people, that, tapping into it, but it wasn't until these crashed UFOs, when they got the integrated circuit board, the digital medium, laser, fiber optics, the list goes on and on and on of all the technology they got. And when they got it back then, it wasn't like, hey, let's just give it to you. They could have gave you like an iPad right then and there in the 50s, but they're greedy and they're like, well, we're going to make money off this and we're going to keep it. So it was like a slowly compartmentalization of information. Like, hey, here's the first thing, a little watch with digital, and it's red. And they're like $20. Now they're like free, but you slowly get all this information. In other words, what they have now, if you knew, you wouldn't even be able to sleep at night because they're still giving it out, compartmentalization, a little bit at a time. Right now, we're just at the point where it's Wi-Fi, it's cell towers, because it's actually a military weapon. So what happens is these people time travel and they're in a different galaxy or something, and they come back here and it's 2,000 years later, or it's 3,000 years later, or it's 3,000 years ago when they came here, and they just left for a little while, and then their time doesn't spin around as fast as ours. So when they come back, it's maybe a greater amount of time into the future.
Have you guys seen the movie called Interstellar? Because that's really well illustrated in that movie. So they pass through a so-called black hole, and they end up in a different part of the universe, and they go to a planet. And even though they're not that the ship is not that far away, every day they spend down there, 20 years goes by aboard the ship. By the time they get back, everybody's old, and it really, oh my God, it's quite a good movie. I've seen it 2, 3 times, and I still am learning stuff when I watch it. So anyway, I recommend Interstellar.
Yeah, haven't seen that.
I really like I like the idea of multiple dimensions and kind of that fractal reality, because those are the only things that kind of make sense when you have these types of scenarios where there's so many synchronicities and coincidences, as you said, Karen, following one particular family, that you have to start to wonder. And John G. Trump got he got really involved in real estate, almost as if he knew where the hot spots in real estate were. And you know, they say location, location, location. The best way to know the best location is to move forward, find the best areas that are going to blow up, come back and buy whatever you can afford. It's not so much how much, but where. And interestingly, with the cell phone thing, I'm really blown away by. I'm glad that we talked about the cell phones, because, you know, cell phones are something that I've been told that we should not be able to afford. And like Gary made the very good point, they practically give them away. I went to the store the other day because my SIM card wasn't working, and I took in my cell phone and I said, "Hey, my SIM card's not working." And the guy said, "Oh, we don't have to pull out your SIM card anymore. We can move you to a digital SIM card. And by the way, if you want a brand new iPhone 16, it's on us." And now, first of all, I can't afford an iPhone 16 right now. I've been with Verizon for 14 plus years. And they said, yeah, it's on us. And this is to Gary's point. What used to be expensive technology, even though I find it still very, you know, it's expensive. When you look at what's inside of the device, there has to be some sort of government subsidy giving these out, because there's gold, there's platinum, there's, you know, you name it, lithium, cobalt, all of these, you know, even if you just melted down cell phones, you have value there. And I think that we are paying a much greater price than just the money that we pay for the cell phone and the yearly connection. Because as Gary said, this technology is so far and away beyond what we believe. It is to the point, I'm sure everybody has an example of where you think of something, especially around Christmas time, and boom, an ad comes up on your phone, and you're pretty darn sure you did not Google that or look into it. Yeah. And yet there is an ad, right? So you have to ask yourself, how far is it?
That happens to me when I'm watching YouTube videos, because I'm super curious. I have a thirsty mind, and I always am gathering data, doing research on a half a dozen subjects at one time. And if I'm interested or I have a query, sure as shooting, in my feed on YouTube will be a video about it. If it's a medicinal product I might need, if it's a change in lifestyle, it could be anything. How the heck does it know? And more recently, I've been playing around with AI generated images, because I'm about to publish my book. My manuscript is finished, and I needed some illustrations, and I'm not an artist, and I couldn't afford to hire an artist. So I thought, well, I'll just play around with one of these free apps. And I was shocked. Did not, like, sometimes it gets it really wrong, but I was surprised at how close it came up to with what I wanted. Blew my mind. So how did it know? And as I'm using it, like, I keep hitting generate, generate, generate. I'm not kidding. I can waste 2 hours on that thing generating images. And I just keep hitting generate. And how does it know what I approve of and what I disapprove of, what I like and what I don't like, for it to change and learn, so it gives me what I want? And then near the end, before the free version kicks me off, it starts giving me really good stuff. I really should subscribe to it, because I use it a lot. So how does that work? Right? Same thing what you were saying, Ryan.
Yeah. It's almost like a telepathic mind wave dimension type trip. What's interesting too is Melissa J in the chat says, so are we time traveling in dream time? Which is really interesting, because when you think about it, I really connected to that when Melissa posted it, because I woke up this morning tripping on one of my dreams where I went back in time and was actually had a conversation with one of my past relatives. Isn't that crazy? So maybe in that dream time is when you can also enter that different dimension, possibly. I don't know, but I think she made a good point with that, because like we talked about, there's so many different angles, there's so many different theories to this whole time traveling thing.
Sure are.
You know, and dreaming, when you dream, that's a form of tapping into that different reality, that different dimension, possibly.
Oh, I absolutely believe that, Gary, because like I said, I just finished my manuscript. I'm about to publish my book, and it's called Transdimensional, Meet the New Neighbors, and it's about my real experiences traveling transdimensionally, and I do it through sleep and lucid dreaming, and so I've got a lot of information, all the weird paranormal stuff that's happened to me in my life, including like what I shared today about the fantasy of having the tea parties with my mom and all of that, but I actually have made substantial contact, and there's a time dilation. So I go to sleep at night, I pass over to another dimensional reality. I can be there for days, weeks, months,
Yeah,
come
that's
back,
crazy. Yeah,
and and then I wake up in the morning, and at first I used to think I was crazy, and then I realized, no, this is a real thing. So I wrote a book about it, and
yeah, it's
hopefully
kind of like
coming out in a
Ryan
couple
said
weeks.
too, when Ryan said the Rip Van Winkle, the sleep
Hmm.
time travel thing. It's the same thing you hear about these people that have these comas, and they go into a coma
Hmm.
for 10 years, and then they wake up. Well, they've kind of time traveled, because they're 10 years in the future.
Hmm.
100%. The pause button has been hit. And Gary brought up something really interesting, which is I have this. My favorite times are right as I'm about to wake up. That kind of
Yeah.
magical time where you're entering this reality again. And what's interesting is they say you get the best sleep when you get rapid eye movement. And if you look into rapid eye movement, this is from the electrical charges in the brain, the impulses. And here we are back to the electrical charges that are purportedly a part of time travel.
Yes.
And when you look at some of the components to electricity, something else that's a very strange, this is weird. This is possibly the weirdest thing about the Donald Trump enigma, is that if you look at long-term electrical injuries, one of the long-term electrical injuries is the a very discolored skin, which is so weird because I delved into this and it was kind of weird delving into it because my wife made like a bronzing lotion and she was like, gosh, that color of his, like, what is
Orange
it?
Man.
Yeah, Orange Man. And when you looked at when he was president in the White House, it kind of started rumors because there were no tanning beds in the White House. Nobody ever saw him put bronzing lotion on. It's not a spray tan. Somebody would have come out and talked about it by now. So we have this interesting color that may be allegedly part of the duration of electrical contact over the years. And if that's the case, it's literally sort of like, well, yeah, I mean, it's getting singed a little, a good way to put it. But one of the most wild theories is that, yeah, when he's super orange, when he's super bright, he's been up to something. And I don't know. I can't go out on that
It's a
limb too
good
far.
theory. It's a really good theory. Guys, we're quickly running out of time, so I'm wondering if we could just do a last go round. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and any closing statements you might have, but also tell people where they can find you and what you're up to.
Absolutely. I pretty much only live stream once a week, every Saturday night. I do it consistently throughout the entire year. And what it is I host a open mic jam. Musicians come up from all over the world, and we play music together. And then on some Saturday nights, I'll just have like a festival of all my really unique cool musicians, and we'll have different festivals. And it's pretty much, man, I just have a good time through music. And as far as my closing statement goes for the time travel thing, is one thing I can tell you is, and we all know this, you have to enjoy your time 100%, because in this dimension, this is the time you get. Maybe there might be time in a different dimension. Who knows? We don't know. But if I could ever tell anything to anyone, is just love each other and love the time that you have here on the planet, and take advantage of every second of it. Thank you for having me, Karen.
Oh, my pleasure. So glad to have you on anytime, Gary. And Ryan.
Great stuff, Gary. Hard to follow that, but I agree 100%. HeroParanormal.com or Hero Paranormal on YouTube. You can also go to spacewolfresearch.com. And I want to second what Gary said. Time is the most valuable commodity. You know, people often say time is money. Well, I rather have time than money, because with time you can make money, you can do anything, but it is the most valuable commodity. And like he said, if you can really harness it, that's why our cell phones, that's why plane tickets, that's why all these things cost a lot of money, is because they cut down on the time that it takes to do that process otherwise. So,
or to walk to New York.
Yeah, long walk to New York. It was such a great comment, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. And I ditto what you guys have said. And I'm almost 70, so I got to tell you, when you get past 60, the days just flip by, the weeks just flip by, the years just flip by. And, I'm just getting out of my pajamas, and I turn around, do a few things, and I'm busy putting my pajamas back on because it's nighttime. And so I really appreciate that our days are numbered, and, why not spend it being happy and joyful, and say no to any of the propaganda that makes you fearful and afraid, and put down the technology, get outside, meet with people you love. And this is perfect time of year to take really good care of yourselves. So I think that's really, really important. I want to thank you both very much for being on the show today. And I want to thank the people that came into the live chat. I'm sorry I didn't get to all of your comments, but I appreciate each and every one of you very much. Thanks for showing up. And whether you're watching the replay or listening to this on an audio podcast, I very much appreciate all of you. So thanks for guys for joining me on the show.
Yes.
And love to have you back in the new year. We'll find another.
Yeah. Well, you know what, Karen? This program today is now in the past, and I will see you guys in the future.
Sure will. You sure will. Yes, thank you. So so that's it for today, and just wish everybody a very awesome week. And I'll say bye-bye and see you next week on the Quantum Guide Show, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton, and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.